All right, okay, we're back. We've got our dark Prussian blue, airbrush cleaned out. I think there was just a little bit of kind of particles stuck in there from maybe our last color. If you ever get a blockage or some bubbles blowing back in your airbrush, don't just force your way through it if you don't have to. Especially if you're early or midway through a project. You know, if you're last highlight pass to the last two guys and you feel like you can squeak through it, I guess feel free, but nothing will derail, you know, an inspired evening of painting faster than your equipment clogging up and spraying all over the place, or not spraying all over the place and just ruining your enthusiasm to sit down and do it. So I always make sure it's clean, ready to go. Nice smooth trigger action. So again, we'll just mix it up nicely. We'll check the consistency on a paper towel. Yep, I'm happy with that. Generally, I don't buy a lot of airbrush paints. I just buy straight regular paints, and then I just mix them and cut them because I feel like you get more out of it. I'm assuming that airbrush paints are just regular paints and then thin down before you get them. Perfect, happy with that, that looks good. Okay, so we're sitting at still 25 PSI. We're gonna start applying, I'm just gonna sketch it out really quick here for you. We're gonna start applying some highlights. So I have a dark blue base. This is really nice, I'm really happy with this. I want to keep the dark blue in some of the spots as best I can. So I'm gonna kind of work my way light towards the front and then the bottom of panels. So in the case of on top of them here, I'm gonna try and keep dark blue back here. I'm gonna go lighter blue as I get to the front here. I'll probably do kind of lighter blue as I come to the front of the torso here. On the front edge of the torso like that, I'll be going lighter blue, trying to keep a little bit of the dark blue in the recesses and whatnot there. Same on the shoulder pads too. I'm gonna go lighter blue as I come down it. And that's kind of just picking a direction that your light comes from and thinking like that will be the high point as opposed to, you know, straight down from the top or from the side. If you're planning on having a light source off the side, you know, that'll change where your highlights are going to be. But I generally always just paint them the same way. Like there's a sun, you know, high noon sun on top of the table. So they all kind of match roughly. So light blue I'm going to be doing kind of the mid, I'd say the majority of this panel here, working our way down. Same thing here, midline down. But as we get to the part, like the underside parts here, obviously if light's shooting down like this on our guy, it's not going to be hitting the complete underside of things, you know, underside of these parts, under the very bottom of the torso, kind of above his belt line there. So we're going to try and maintain dark blue in those areas. Same thing with like the backs of the legs, you know, these parts here, we're probably going to hit with a medium blue and then a lighter blue after that. Same thing here. Any part that would be exposed to more light or more sunlight, we want it to be brighter. And then blue, like I said, was a really easy color to get too bright too quickly on. And if that happens, hopefully it does, so I can show you how to fix it, we'll go over it. So again, I'm going to do kind of smooth, nice smooth layers and just slowly build up. So I only, like I said, pull on the trigger maybe 5 to 10% of how far back it can go. And I'm using mostly air with a little bit of paint. And this is pretty opaque, this mix that I have here. As we get up into the other highlight layers, we will make it a lot thinner. More of a glazing kind of idea. So I do want to make sure that I cover all angles, because as you work your way up through highlights, you don't want to miss any spots. You always want to be gradually building up on areas and then reinforcing that area with your next pass with like a little bit smaller area. But as long as you're building on the same areas repeatedly over and over, then it's going to look like a nice, natural, smooth progression. You don't want to jump from your darkest blue to your lightest blue on a panel, you know, just those two colors, because it's going to look really silly. It's going to look pretty ugly, like somebody just spray painted two very different colors. We want to try and go as smooth as we can. Yeah, I'm feeling like that's pretty good. It's a fairly, again, it looks quite dark on camera, but we're getting a fairly nice blue. It's definitely more of a noticeable blue than our last one was there. All right, let's check and see how we're doing for amount left. A fair bit left there. So we're gonna get rid of some of that. And then we'll mix in our next blue highlight. Okay, next blue. This guy here. This one is very, very strong. It's very strong, and normally by itself it's actually quite dark. So that's why we're going to mix in a little bit of white with it. I'd say 2 drops is probably great. Yeah, these paints are highly, highly pigmented. I'd say it's almost darker than our previous blue by itself. So we'll put a drop of white in. And again, because the blue is so strongly pigmented, normally all white, like a drop of white that big would totally wash out the color and make it really, really a kind of a light powder blue. Check the consistency there. Yeah, it's pretty good. But because this pigment is so strong, you can add a lot more other colors to it before it affects the actual main color. All right. Actually, let's just mix a little bit like that. Try it out. Yeah, that's nice. I want it as smooth and controlled as possible. The higher up in the highlights you get, I usually go the thinner with my paints, and then you're painting a lot less on at a time. You're using a lot more airflow, just like you're glazing with a paintbrush. Very thin, multiple passes. Okay. Just the old test on the hand. Yep. Okay. So slowly build up. So right now it's still just air. Now we're getting a tiny bit of paint out, and I'm just focusing, watching it slowly build up. So as you can see, this is quite high high potency paint. It really adds up fast. So we want to be careful that we don't do too much in one spot. So I'm kind of thinking about coming down from the top where the light would be hitting. Shoulders, gun. And a lot of times if I'm going to be doing something like black metal or gray for the metallic parts, or metallics themselves, I don't know exactly where I'm going to put them later. Sometimes I'll have it planned out, but a lot of times I'll have just a really loose idea. So I'll just highlight the whole model as if it were all going to be blue. And that way later on, if I have to change up what I was planning on doing, or I'm picking a spot that all of a sudden it's not going to be a gray casing, it's going to be, I actually wanted it to be blue, then it's already blue and I don't have to go back and try and fix it with a brush compared to the airbrushing stuff around it. So a lot of times I'll just paint everything the same base color, do all the highlights. And that way later it's not an issue. I can easily repaint it to a different color by brush if I want to. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Not too bright. All right, so I think that's pretty good. I'm not going to go any higher than that. I feel like that's as light blue as I want it to be. It's actually lighter blue than I really want it to be. And I'd like to reestablish a fair amount of shadows, just because it's hard to paint with the camera in the way. And generally, it would be a little bit smoother transitions. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab some inks, probably some dark blues and some purples, and we're going to come at it from the bottom side and just kind of reinforce the shadows. So huge, it's a hugely helpful trick if you're doing a bunch of things at once, like 8-10 mechs in a row. Get them all to this stage here, and then swap over to your inks, and we'll add shadows back in. So I'm going to clean this out, and we'll check back then.